let's have a look. All right, so what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to write a program. Okay, we're going to solve some problems in Python. I'm going to focus on the Python. You know, I don't think I'm going to worry about the flowchart today. Maybe we'll look at it later. But let's just whiz through the Python, right? That way we can finish the class early. If we have time afterwards, we'll look at that. All right, so what we have to do is we have to write 3 little problems. 10 minutes each, right? What do you think? Maybe. All right, so let's have a look. The first one, what happens in this problem is the person puts in a string, which is their name. The person puts in a string. Now, what we know about a string is a complex, it's an object, but it's a complex variable that's made up of a ordered list of characters. And so because it's an ordered list, we can identify each of those characters by their position in the order. So we have an index. So that's good. So when the person types in their name, Zane, we know that the first position is Z, which is actually position 0. The second position is E. We know all those positions, okay? So we can find each one of those by a number. So because we can find them by a number, that means that we can use a loop to go through from the start to the end. Loops, actually, loops are perfect for dealing with lists and strings. So we're going to deal with this with a loop. Now, what do we have to do? Hi there. What we have to do is we have to check to make sure that they put in a correct name in the first place. So the name has to be only alphabetic. So it can't be numeric. It has to be only alphabetic. Now, you might remember from last time we had some special functions that we can test a string to see if it's numeric, alphanumeric, that type of thing. So I think there's one called alpha that'll work with that. Anyways, I think I'm just going to get sort of started on this. And let's see what happens. I think I'm sharing that. All right, so let's get going. I'm going to go into D2L, into idle. I think I'm going to go into idle. Yeah, there I am. So guys, can I ask you to sort of be with me on this? And let's try and sort of look at this and see if we can sort of figure it out. Problem, Mohammed. All right, so let's stop for a second and talk about final exam. You want to talk about final exam, right? It'll make our lesson go a little longer, you realize. The final exam is on the 18th of April at 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock in the morning. That was published today by the yeah, anyways, I received an email about it about 6 o'clock. Any other question? The final exam will probably not be on paper. It'll probably be D2L lockdown browser in the classroom with, you know, no books, that kind of thing.
But the all lectures, right?
Sorry?
All lectures.
The final exam will be on everything that we've done in the course. All right. Any other questions about the final exam? Final exam will be 2 hours long.
Is there even student code and flowchart?
Probably.
Because last semester we didn't have.
So I thought last semester we gave the students some paper and asked them to draw a flowchart or something. What, maybe we didn't. Okay. I don't know. Those are fair questions, and maybe I can ask and find out for you. I don't know, but those are things that are in the course, so they could turn up on the final exam. You know what I mean? Basically, the final exam can cover anything that we've talked about in the course. So I expect that you could say what. So what have we seen in the tests, which have been just a little over an hour long? We've seen like 30 questions, that type of thing, 40 marks. I think you should expect something that's going to be 50 or 60 marks, 50 questions, and 2 hours. And so probably instead of doing two Python programs, you'll probably have to do 3 or maybe 4. You know what I mean? But yeah, so And yeah, you could expect that the Python programs would be things that we've done in the last few weeks. And the reason why that is because that's where it gets harder, right? Or that's where you can't do the stuff that we do at the end unless you understand how to do the stuff that we did at the start, right? So, I mean, all we have to do is test the stuff at the end to know if you know how to do the stuff at the start. Does that make sense? I think that we'll work on that basis. Any other questions about the final exam? All right. So let's start on this tutorial then. Tutorial 6, we have to, if we see what happens there, we have to read a name. So we're going to read this name, and we have some things that we have to check. It has to be alphanumeric. There's nothing about how long it has to be. It just has to be alphanumeric. Oh, that's not hard. Okay, so first thing we have to do is we have to get a name. So we can do that pretty easy. We just say name equals and do the input, right? That's easy. So let's do that. Let's get the name. And this is how we've got some text to do that with. So I'll just get that text and put it in there. So we get the name. Then the next thing we have to do is the name must be alphanumeric. So we can do our error testing by checking to see if it's alphanumeric. So I think, let's try that. So while not name is alpha, I think would work. So is alpha, I'm not exactly sure on that, but I think that's what we do. So if I'm right about that, what happens there is alpha is a Boolean. So it's going to return true or false. So if it's true, that would be because the word that they put in is all letters of the alphabet and not anything else. So if it's not, we're going to give them an error message. So what does the error message says? It's this error message here, right? So we're going to say that. So if not, then we're going to print this. And that's this thing here. Please use only alphanumeric. So can you see why I'm doing that? Hope you can see why I'm doing that. We require them to put only letters of the alphabet in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to ask them to keep putting in the name if they didn't put it in right. We could have done this with an if, but I think this way is more elegant. I think I like it better. So I do stuff that I like better. I don't know why. I think that's fair in computing. There's not always just one right answer. So if it's not alpha, then we say that they have to enter it again. So then the next thing is we've got this situation where we've got this word that they put in, and it's not alpha. It is alpha. And we have to make it with spaces in between each letter and make each letter capitalized. Now, how I would do that is in 2 steps. What I would do is I would make a string which is empty. And so this string is going to represent their name, but name with spaces. So I'll call it n space. How about that? So it's a name with spaces in it. And we start off. Now, what I'm doing here is that is an empty string. Do you see I just put 2 quotes? 2 quotes means it's an empty string. There's no space in between there. It's just an empty string. So because you know concatenation, we can add things together to make a little string into a big string. That's what we're going to end up doing in this one. We're going to add things to it till the string gets bigger. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the what I should do is we're going to go through the string from the start of the string until the end. So until we're not at the end of the string. So I should start with a counter, I guess. What would the counter be? Let's call it letter. Letter is going to start with our position, or we could call it index. Actually, sometimes we just use I as a good index, right? I equals 0. So I for index. Let's do that. So while I Why do what? 2 quotes? Yes. Okay. So the 2 quotes here, there's one for start and one for end of the string. So that just means that there's a string there. Yeah. So that's how we show a string. A string always starts with a quote and ends with a quote. But this is an empty string. It doesn't have anything in it. But pardon? When do we do what with a string? When we will? I'm going to do that in the loop. So what we're going to do in the loop is we're going to add to the end of the string every letter in the thing. So that's how we're going to do it. So what we're going to do is we've got I as a counter. And so while I is less than the length of our name. So name is a string that we've got from the user. We're going to start at the start of the string. We're going to go to the end of the string, 1 letter at a time. We're going to add it to something else. What are we going to add it to? We're going to add it to this thing called end space. So end space is then going to have added to it. What are we going to add? We're going to add that character at that position in the name. So name is the string from which we're going to get the character. The I is the index. So first time through the loop, I is going to be 0. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the character at position 0 and it's going to add it to the end of this string. And then we're also going to add to that, because we're just doing concatenation now, right? This is string concatenation. We're just going to also add to that. Now, what I'm putting here is an empty string. Now, when no, it's not an empty string. This is an empty string. Let me use the same quote so you don't get confused. But what I'm doing is I am putting a space. See, I hit the space bar. Do you see that this is different than this? This is an empty string. This one's got a space in it. So we're going to get that space thing happening after every character by adding the space on the end of this. And that's all there is to it. Wasn't that easy? That's it. Oh, all we have to do is increment the I. So I gets add 1 to it. So I plus equal 1. Increment our counter. And that's it. That will build up that thing. Now the problem is we need to make it all uppercase. So how we can do that is we just say end space takes a is end space dot upper. That makes it all uppercase. Then we can print it. I think that'll work. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure about this while, but I think it'll work. Shall we try? So this is okay, well, it starts off all right, so it means I probably don't have too much syntax errors. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this error, ZE33, and see if we get the result that it says we should if we put the error in. So it's saying that we can't have numbers. Person can't have numbers in their name. So let's see, ZE33. Yeah, so that seems to be working fine, right? And even the loop is working because it's asking me for the name again. So, I mean, if I put anything else with the name, with a number in it, it's going to say, well, you can't do that. It's got to just be letters of the alphabet. So I'll try the correct letters of the alphabet. There's Zane. And yeah, there we go. We got our Z, E, I. So what we did is 1 space at a time, or 1 letter at a time, we added a space to it. And then we uppercased it. That's it. Seems to have worked. What do you think of that? Easy peasy? Anybody needs any explaining on that? I guess I'll go through it because I know people are looking at it and trying to make it work. So I'm going to go through it again. First thing that we did, we got the user to enter a name. But we know that they sometimes enter things that they shouldn't. And so we're going to check to make sure that they did it right. What we particularly care about is it must be only letters of the alphabet. So this is a string function. The isAlpha function tests and it returns either true or false. It's true if, it'll only be true if everything is a letter of the alphabet in the string that it's associated with. So in this case, name, every letter must be a letter of the alphabet. Otherwise, it's false. So if we put in something that isn't a letter of the alphabet, then it's going to, do you see where you put a not in there in the while? The while statement, because, yeah, we don't want to go into the while if it's not, yeah. But we don't care about the capitals, not yet. And okay, so if they put it in wrong, we give them an error. We tell them to do it again. Then we start off with our string. Now, you got this? This is an empty string. We put the quotes there, which we use for a string, but we didn't put anything between the quotes. There's nothing there. I know it looks like there might be something. There's not. This is when you put something. There's a space here. No space there. And then this is looping through the string, starting at the start of the string, going to the end of the string, one letter at a time. You see what, you know what the len is, right? Len is how long is the string. So we're basically saying as long as our counter is less than the length of the string, then we're good. Okay, I think I talked about that enough. Did I? Any questions on it? Because we'll have a shorter lesson if we just rip into it, right? You guys ready to rip? Rhoda, question. Sorry? Okay, let me just pause the, because I'm recording this. Oh, look, I got something there too, 18 or 8. So the final is on the 18th, 18. At 8 o'clock. So it's 18 and the 8. All right, let me just pause the recording on this because recording on this. So in the second one, what we're supposed to do with problem 2, we got to do a function. All right, so we've done the problem, but we did it just as straight code. Now, can we turn this into a function? We have done this before. It really is very easy, students, to change this into a program with a that includes a function. So what I'm thinking is, look, it says that the function has an input of the name and an output of the space thing, right? So this thing here at the end that we're going to print, that's the output. The input is the name. So if you can see that we've got a bunch of code in between there, that could all be our function. Well, actually not this bit here, because that, well, we could put that in the function, but I think there's no need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define our function here. So we have to define the function before we use it. Do you remember in the lesson that we had yesterday, we defined the function? How we do that is with this special word called def, that for define. We're going to define our function. I guess what we'll call this function will be our space word or something like that. I don't know. It's yeah. So let's call it namespace or something, or space name or whatever. Did it say give us a name to call it? Yeah, let's just call it name, spaced name, spaced name. So it's a name that's got spaces in it. All right. So when we do a function, what's not optional is you have to have brackets and you have to have a colon. But the thing is, okay, does it include inputs? Is there any inputs into this function? Well, yes, there is. There's a name. A name comes in and a name goes out. So I'm going to put a name here, but I'm not going to use a variable name because we already have name here as a global variable, and I don't want to use a global variable in my local function. So I'm just going to use n, but n is going to be name. We know that, right? But n is a local variable. It's only available inside the function. And I want to not use name because if I use name, I could mess up the global function of the global variable. So I don't want to do that. So I'm using n instead. Okay. All right. So that's the input. The output is going to be the return. So I hope you remember from the lesson when we talked about functions, how the function works is you need to do a def, you need to give it a name, you need to define the inputs, and you have to define the output. The output is just going to be, well, whatever. So let's call it SN. SN for space name, right? For space name. Yeah, that'll work. Now, the rest is actually not too hard at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this code, because this is just not that one. The code that actually changes it. That's this. This is the code. This code here, sorry. This is the code that changes the thing. I'm going to cut that from there, and I'm going to put it in the function. Now, the problem is with I have to tab those things in a bit. Every one of them will have to be tabbed in one, because they're all kind of wrong in the tabbing. And I think that's about right. So what I've done is I've just taken that code and turned it into a function. Now the thing is, I've called this n space, and here I've called it SN. So I'm going to change this last thing here to SN. The thing that I'm going to return is going to be SN. All right, so coming in is N. N is a string. So don't use name. The program would actually work with name, because name is a global function. A global variable. But I want to not mess with name. I'm going to work with N. So N actually looks like a name. All right, so I think that'll work. We created a new variable called N space. We got a counter. We're going to take this string from the start of the string to the end of the string. We're going to, yeah, it's all fine. It's all going to work. So this is where the program starts. So I'm going to indicate that this is where the program starts. This is the main of the program. So this is our first thing we're going to do, is we're going to read that. Then we're going to check to make sure that the name is okay. When we've got the name okay, then we're going to call the function. So here is above is the function defined. We defined the function. And I just used the code that we would use to change the name. So now I have to call the function in the main. That's going to happen here. So how am I going to do that? So it looks like the function is going to have to return this variable called n space. I don't like that, because we're using that as a local variable. So I'm just going to call it ns. Here it's sn. That's fine. So I'm going to say here ns takes the value of, or the return value of, our function. What's the name of our function? Our function is this. I'm just going to copy that. So I'm going to call the function by its name, and I'm going to pass the correct variable to it. And that's it. This is the function call. I guess you could say this is step one, right? It's a two-step process. So this is step one. You need to define the function. And this is step two. Now, all this other code, what are we doing with all this other code? All we're doing is we're getting a good name. This is all just to get a name. So we get the name, and then we check to see that it's a good name. And when we got a good name, then we can pass that name. See, the name is passed as a parameter to the function. So I'm going to put a little note there about that. You don't have to type this red stuff to make it work, you know. The red stuff is just comments. That's just, I'm just putting it there so maybe it makes some sense. All right, let's try it. Enter a name. So if we put the bad name in, still works the same. And we'll put in Zane in lowercase, and it should put it in uppercase for us. Oops. And there it comes. So that worked. Oh, you okay with that? Please enter name Zane, and it comes back all in uppercase. So can I explain it? Where does the program start? The program starts here, right? It doesn't start here. Why do we have to do this first? Because we have to load into the memory the instructions for how to do the function, but we're not doing the function yet. We're just loading into memory the instructions how to do this function when we tell it to do it. Here's when we tell it to do it. The call. We can't call a function until we've got the inputs for the function. So all this stuff here between here and here is just to get the right inputs to put into the function. The input is we have to have a name, which is alpha. So once we got the alpha name, we can add it as a input into that function, and that function passes out to us. See the return value. Return, I called it here SN, but that return value here is called NS. That is what I'm going to print. Any questions? Easy peasy? All right. Now, problem 3 is a totally different problem, so we're going to have to start that one from scratch. In problem 3, we're going to put in some numbers, and then we're going to use a library, which is the random library, to generate some random numbers. And we're going to add those random numbers to the front and the back of our string of numbers. So we're going to have a string of numbers. We're going to add more numbers to the front and back of it. Okay. And then we're going to convert it to a hex. It's all kind of fun. So it's about creating and we have to do it as a function. So do you see there, we have to call the random library. This function, this is a function in the random library. What the I and J are is I is going to be the lower number, J is going to be the higher number, and we're going to get a random number between those two numbers. So what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to get a seed with 6 characters in it, but it has to all be only alphanumeric. So we're going to have to use the alphanumeric function on that. This is kind of fun. You guys indulge me while I have some fun writing Python code. Is that all right? Let's do it, right? So let's go. So the new file here, this is, I'm just going to call this our password thing or something. I better put my glasses on or I can't see what I'm doing. So, and you'd put your name. And so when we look at the problem, what we're going to see is we need to get a name, or we need to get this thing called a seed, and the seed can only be digits. The seed can only be digits. So we can do that in a loop like we did the other one. So this is very much, so we're doing the first step, same as we did that last program, where we just get the right number. We could actually do that as a function, I think. I think we could define a function that gets, let's say, let's call this function get seed. And so get seed doesn't have any inputs, but what it does have is it's going to have an output, which is going to be the seed. So, so we're going to return S. How this one is going to work is we're going to ask the user to enter a name, a seed. So, right. So we'll say seed. Yeah. Okay. Seed takes a value of whatever we're going to ask the user to enter a name. So that's an input value. So if I look at this thing, it'll say how to do it. Please enter a seed composed of 6 integers. So we're gonna do that. You know what? I wrote this program earlier this morning with students in another class, and I didn't do it this way. Today, I'm going to do it with 2 functions. This morning, I did it with 1. So the only reason why I'm telling you that is usually there's more than one correct way to answer a problem. All right. And actually, the teachers who prepared this question, they produced an answer too, and my answer is not the same as theirs. And so what I mean by that is your answers shouldn't all be the same, but they could all still be right. You with me? There's more than one way to solve a problem. And, you know, you after a while, you get your own style. It's just like people's writing. If you're writing books and stuff like that, you get your own style. And, you know, it's like your voice comes through in your programming. And, you know, I guess you could have forensic on, and you could look at a program and you could tell kind of who wrote it by the way it was, by the way it was. So, I mean, there's more than one way of doing it. That's all I'm saying there. So, we're going to ask them to do the seed, but the thing is, the seed might not be any good. So we're going to have a thing there, right? So what we're going to say is, well, what if the seed is not numeric? I think it is. It must be numeric. I think it's like that. What if, while not numeric, and it has to be 6 characters long, right? So while not, seed is numeric, and seed, the length of the seed, it must be exactly 6. So what I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to say, well, it has to be exactly 6 characters long, and it has to be numbers. So if it's not, then we give them the error message. And the error message is here. The seed should consist of numbers only, and it should be 6 characters long. Oh, it's okay. They've done it with 2 different things. All right, so if I'm going to have it be exactly the same as they've done it, I'll have to change this a bit. So we won't be able to do the joint. We'll have to have so while it's numeric, then we're going to give this, if it's not numeric, we have this error message. Take away this bracket, sorry, because we won't need that. We're going to have this error message. And so this error message is the seed can consist of numbers only. Seed can consist of numbers only, and we can ask them to do the seed again. So I'm going to be a little bit different than what they've done because I'm putting that in a loop. Now, the thing is that the other thing that they might do is they might have had it not 6 characters long. So while not, we don't even need to do that. While the len is, this is not good. No, it's not good because, no. Sorry, we got to do it together. I'm sorry about this. Because, yeah, so I am going to do that. And it should be 6 characters. So I'm just going to put in here 6. So that covers both of it. It should consist of 6 numbers. Okay. So no, it's all going to be one while. Now, so while the seed is not that, and the length of the seed is not equal to 6. Yeah. There's a couple ways I could do it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one not for the entire thing. So sorry about the confusion on that. I'm going to do this. This is a conjunction, right? Where we put an and between them. When you have a conjunction with an and, this was in the test that you just had, then both things, the thing on the left and the thing on the right, have to be true for the whole thing to be true. But we want the whole thing to, if the whole thing is true, then we won't go into the error. It must be true for us to continue on. If both of these things are not true, then we stay in this loop and we keep asking them to give another one. So that's fine. So out of this, when we're finished this while, the next step will be we will have a seed, which is the right thing, which is 6 numbers. So what are we going to do with the 6 numbers? We're going to, what it says to do is we're going to add 2 numbers at the start. Okay, so we're going to return seed. So this thing just gets a good seed because we need another function to do this other thing. We have to have a function that that generates the password, because that's what the description here says. We need a function called generate password. So we're going to define this function generate password. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the seed, which I will call S here. That's going to come as the input, and it's going to do some things to it. So what it's going to do is it's going to add